This diesel locomotive of the class 107 is in TT gauge and comes from the company called VEB Berliner TT-Bahn. It was built in the 1980s in the former GDR. The locomotive is powered by two sets of wheels, one of which has traction tires to increase the locomotive's traction power. Weights ensure that the locomotive runs smoothly. The length over the buffers is 105 mm. The model was based on the V75 series locomotive of the Deutsche Reichsbahn, which was renamed as Class 107 diesel locomotive from 1970 onwards. These diesel-electric shunting locomotives were produced by a Czech company in the former Czechoslovakia. In 1962, 20 locomotives of this series were built. With a length over the buffers of 12,560 mm and a service weight of almost 63 tons, they reached top speeds of 60 km per hour. The engine achieving the nominal output of 750 horsepower. This was completely sufficient for their usage as shunting locomotives. In contrast, for example, to the well-known 110 series of the Deutsche Reichsbahn, the 107 had an end driver's cap and a so-called bridge frame design with external circulation. Their angular shape made them so striking. However, the principle was retained here too. Two axles were mounted in pairs on a bogie, and all four axles were driven. Because the driver's cap was clearly positioned on one side, there was one main direction of travel. And only in this direction was the driver's cap fully equipped. In the other direction of travel, with now the driver's cap in front, only an auxiliary desk was provided, even though the driver, of course, had a much better view of the route. These 20 locomotives were originally intended for shunting at Leipzig Central Station, since at that time, that is in the mid-1950s, people in the GDR were not yet in a position to build these machines themselves. The Czech manufacturer in question was contacted. However, he did not design a new locomotive for this order. Therefore, the series is more or less identical to the Czech series, which today bears the number 720. And the manufacturer was so successful that they manufactured 287 locomotives of this series for Czechoslovakia, and in addition to the 20 machines delivered to the GDR, they also exported a further 522 locomotives to the Soviet Union. As planned, the 20 locomotives in the GDR were largely used, indeed, in shunting duties at the Leipzig train stations. On the other hand, they were also allowed to do their duty in front, for example, of construction trains, and were rarely allowed to transport even passenger trains when necessary. Unfortunately, most of this series were not only decommissioned at the end of the 1970s and beginning of 1980s, but also scrapped. The 4 locomotives that came to the Karlsdorf cement plant railway were lucky. They were preserved for the time being and continued to serve in front of construction trains. The locomotive V75-018, for example, has survived to this day. It was refurbished by the company called Railway Systems RP and is still operational even today.